You shouldn't be on the road at your age, she sneered. You could cause a hit and run and not even know it. Waltz didn't argue. He'd already seen what real wreckage looked like: metal and blood and jungle mud. Brookfield, Texas woke under a honey-colored dawn. Dust rose lazily from the dirt shoulders as pickup trucks headed toward the grain co-op, and a single motorcycle engine hummed along Maple Street. A low, steady thrum. Nothing hurried. Walt Bennett, 79, sat tall on his weathered 1974 Indian Chief. The paint was faded, the chrome long past showroom shine, but every bolt knew his touch. Every gear shift answered like an old friend. In the saddlebag, a hydraulic fitting and a length of hose from Miller's Hardware. At the stop sign near the old feed store, the quiet morning cracked with blue and red light. The flicker bounced off shop windows and the chrome of his mirrors. Walt rolled the bike to a halt, one boot on the pavement, the other still braced on the peg. A black and white cruiser idled behind him. Out stepped Officer Megan Cole, 27, mirrored sunglasses, jaw tight. Her hand hovered near the holster, not in threat, just in the way of someone who wanted you to remember it was there. Her partner, Kyle Reed, 31, came around the passenger side, gum clicking as his eyes swept the motorcycle like a shark circling a wounded fish. "Sir, license and registration. Step off the bike." Walt turned his head, voice even. "Is there a problem, officer?" "We'll decide that. Just comply." Maple Street had only a handful of morning pedestrians, but they slowed now. 2 women leaving the bakery, a man locking his hardware store. Across the road, a teenager held up a phone, lens already trained on the scene. Walt swung his leg over, boots meeting pavement with a hollow thud. He handed over his license. Cole flipped it in her hand, her tone shifting from official to personal. "Do you live alone? Got any medical conditions? You aware you might be a danger to yourself and others?" Then the sneer. "You shouldn't be on the road at your age. You could cause a hit and run and not even know it." Kyle snorted, circling the Indian Chief. "Man, this thing belongs in a museum. How is it even running?" The teenager laughed. Walt said nothing. His gaze slid past them, past the officers, the storefronts, the cracked sidewalks, out toward the wheat fields shimmering in the distance. He'd learned long ago that not every fight deserved his voice. But his silence wasn't weakness. It was memory. And across the street, Frank Miller, Gulf War vet, grease up to his elbows, was already wiping his hands on a rag, eyes narrowing. He knew exactly who they were talking to. Across the street, Frank Miller froze mid-step, rag in hand. He'd been tightening a serpentine belt under the hood of a battered Chevy, half listening to a country station playing through the shop's tinny radio. But when Officer Cole leaned in toward Walt, voice low and condescending, Frank cut the words. "Danger to yourself and others. Hit and run." His jaw worked. He knew that tone. It wasn't about safety. It was about putting someone in their place. Frank's eyes went to the motorcycle, the Indian Chief. He'd seen Walt roll past the shop on that bike for years, always upright, never reckless. Rain, cold, triple-digit heat. It didn't matter. The man rode like he was escorting something sacred. But more than that, Frank remembered the little things. The generator Walt had fixed for his mother during that ice storm back in '94, refusing payment. The time the church roof sprung a leak and Walt spent 2 days patching it alongside the volunteers, his hand steady on the ladder while men half his age wobbled. The way he showed up to the Veterans Hall meetings, but never talked about himself. Frank knew enough to know there was more. He stepped back into the garage, wiping his hands harder than necessary, and grabbed his phone from the counter. The number he punched in wasn't for a customer or a parts distributor. It was from deeper in the past, a dog-eared page in an old contact book marked "Emergency Only." The line rang once. "This is Frank Miller," he said, voice tight. "We've got a situation. They pulled over a man on Maple Street across from my shop. 2 uniforms, young, getting ready to haul him in for a psych eval. Name's Walter Bennett." For 3 seconds, there was only breathing on the other end. Then the voice on the line, flat at first, shifted, sharpened. "Hold the line, Frank. Do not let them move him until we arrive. You hear me? Do not let them move him until we arrive." The line went dead. Frank stepped to the shop door again. On the street, Officer Cole was talking fast now, posture leaning forward, voice meant for the crowd as much for Walt. "Sir, for your safety and the public's, we're placing you under evaluation. You'll be transported to Brookfield General for a medical check." "No," he said. Just one word, steady as steel. "That's not optional." "It is," he answered. A few more people had gathered. The teenager was still filming, his phone tilted for the best view. An older woman from the post office stood with her arms crossed, frowning. A man in a ball cap whispered to his friend something about that old guy with the motorcycle. Kyle shifted his weight, clearly itching to end the scene. "Sir, you can cooperate or we can make this—" Frank stepped into the street before he knew he'd moved. "Officers," he called, "that man's not going anywhere with you." Cole turned, mirrored lenses catching the light. "Excuse me?" "I said—" Frank took another step forward, grease-stained boots on the asphalt. "He's staying right here until some people I called get here. You can wait with him if you want." "This is official police business," Cole snapped. "You don't—" The young teenager filming muttered, "Oh, this is getting good," and zoomed in. Frank ignored him, kept his eyes on Cole. "Trust me, officer. You move him before they arrive, you'll regret it." She stared at him for a long moment, the pause just long enough for doubt to creep in. Then she glanced toward her partner. Kyle frowned but said nothing.
Walt stood still, saying nothing either. He looked almost attached, like the moment wasn't happening to him at all. But Frank could see it. The tiny shift in his jaw, the way his hands stayed loose at his sides when most men would have clenched fists. The old soldier's patience, holding the line without giving an inch. From somewhere far off, a mile, maybe more, a faint low rumble began to thread through the morning air. Frank's lips tightened. Here they come. At first, it was just a vibration in the soles of their boots. Then the sound thickened, a low rolling growl that didn't belong to farm trucks or weekend bikers. The teenager lowered his phone for a second, frowning toward the east. The post office clerk shaded her eyes. Even Officer Cole turned her head, trying to place the noise. It grew fast, deep enough to rattle windows, heavy enough to make every dog on Maple Street start barking. Then they appeared. 8 black armored SUVs in tight formation, a military transport truck with the flags snapping sharp in the wind. Flanking them, 2 military police motorcycles, engines snarling like they'd been waiting all morning for this run. They didn't slow for the turn. They rolled in hot, tires biting the asphalt, every vehicle braking in perfect unison until the street was sealed at both ends. Doors opened and uniformed men and women stepped out in practice coordination. Their movements weren't frantic, but precise. Each one knew exactly where they were supposed to stand. From the lead SUV emerged a tall, silver-haired figure in a dress uniform, cut so sharp it looked like it could draw blood. Major General Robert Hayes, shoulders squared, eyes scanning like a man who had walked into battlefields and expected them to obey his presence. He didn't glance at the crowd or the officers. His stride was direct, past the military police, past Frank, straight toward Walt. 2 paces away, Hayes stopped. He brought his hand up in a crisp, perfect salute. "Colonel Bennett, sir. It's an honor." Gasps broke out behind the line of bystanders. The teenager's phone wobbled in his hand. Cole froze, sunglasses hiding her eyes, but not her sudden stiffness. Kyle's smirk was gone, replaced with something closer to panic. Hayes turned his head, not fully looking at them. "Do you have any idea who you pulled over?" "Sir, we didn't." "This man," Hayes cut in, "led covert rescue missions in Laos in '72, evacuated over 100 civilians from war zones, 3 Silver Stars, 2 Purple Hearts, and trained operatives who now defend this country." Military police shifted, subtly forming a shield around Walt, not aggressive, protective, the kind of barrier you don't test. From the crowd, an elderly woman stepped forward. She carried a worn photograph, edges frayed from decades of hands. She held it out with both palms as if offering it to the air between them. "This boy," she said, trembling, "was my brother. He came home because of him."
In the faded image, a much younger Walt stood among soldiers, one arm around a small boy in patched clothes. Silence swept the street like a cold front. Even the barking dogs had gone quiet. Walt looked at the photograph for a long moment, then at the woman. He gave the smallest nod. She smiled through tears. The teenager filming slowly lowered his phone. This wasn't the video he'd expected to capture. Hayes lowered his salute, but his posture stayed formal. "Colonel," he said, "would you like an escort home?" Walt's mouth curved, just barely. "No, General. I think I can still find my way." A ripple of restrained laughter moved through the soldiers, soft, respectful, the kind reserved for a commander whose wit had once cut tension on nights when the only other sound was incoming fire. Hayes nodded once, then turned to the military police. "Form the corridor." They moved instantly, boots striking in perfect rhythm as they lined the street in 2 rows. The soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, forming a living tunnel from where Walt stood, to the open space beyond the blockade. Their faces were steady, eyes locked ahead, each one an unspoken acknowledgement of the man in front of them. Frank stepped back toward his shop, arms crossed, but his jaw tight with pride. The crowd had grown, but no one dared push forward now. Phones were up again, but the angle was different. Less spectacle, more reverence. Walt swung his leg over the Indian chief. The seat creaked faintly under his weight, the leather molded by decades of rides. He turned the key, and the old engine came to life with that same stubborn low rumble it had carried through thousands of miles. He sat for a moment, letting the sound fill the silence. Then he rolled forward, the tires crunching softly over the sun-baked pavement. As he entered the corridor, every soldier brought their hand up in a sharp salute. The sunlight caught the edges of their uniforms, glinting off medals and insignia, the movement precise as clockwork. Walt didn't speed. Each yard felt deliberate, like a march, the kind of slow pass made at funerals and homecomings. His gaze stayed ahead, but his presence acknowledged each face along the way. When he cleared the line, he gave the engine a slight twist. The chief's growl deepened, echoing down the street as he rode toward the horizon. Phones kept recording, but now there was no mocking commentary, only the quiet click of still photos, the murmurs of people realizing they had witnessed something they didn't fully understand yet. And behind the rumble of the bike, there was the steady rhythm of boots as the soldiers held their salute until Walt disappeared from sight. 1 week later, the Brookfield Police Department's marked cruisers lined the parking lot at Fort Travis. Every officer, from rookies to the chief, attended a mandatory training on veteran interaction and de-escalation, orders that had come from higher than the county. For Officer Megan Cole, the sessions were more than policy. The looks from her peers, the commentary online, and the footage now circulating nationwide had left her with a weight she couldn't shake. She had been taught procedure. She had not been taught humility.
On a Saturday morning, she drove alone out to the Bennett farmhouse. The gravel driveway crunched under her tires. Out back, she saw Walt lying on a mechanic's creeper beneath an old tractor, tools spread neatly around him. "Mr. Bennett?" she called. A clank of metal. Then his voice, calm as ever. "Coffee's inside if you're looking to talk." They sat at a small kitchen table, the sunlight spilling in across a counter cluttered with mason jars and spare parts. Cole stared at her mug for a long time before speaking. "Why didn't you tell us who you were?" Walt sipped his coffee, set it down. "Respect isn't about who you are. It's about how you treat people, especially when you don't know their story." She didn't answer right away. Her eyes drifted to the window, where the 1974 Indian chief sat in the yard, scratched, weathered, still running. She realized it wasn't just the motorcycle that had more roads left in it. Walt Bennett did too. So did she. When she left, she didn't ask for a photograph or a handshake. Some moments were meant to be carried quietly.